Hey everybody, this is Tony.
And this is Paul, and we're coming at you from the Friends for Life podcast.
Hey, I'm Tony Stewart. I like to read books on leadership. What? Thanks. Hey everybody, I'm Paul with Friends for Life. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Friends for Life podcast. This is the Sarah takeover while Tony and Paul are out on the road interviewing people in all 88 counties. We're so happy you joined us today, and let's go meet our guests. If you would like to introduce yourself, my friend.
Yes, great. Well, I'm the other Sarah Buffie. Who am I? What do I do? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
Yeah, great. Well, I am, I guess I categorize myself as a facilitator, an engager, a supporter, trainer, etc., helping people, organizations, institutions understand how early life experiences impact us, our brain, our body, and our behavioral patterns. And then I like to work with people to figure out how we get on that healing journey together. And I do that through Soulbird Consulting, my consulting company, where we work with, like I said, teachers, mental health professionals, disability support workers. And really, if you're a human being, I'd like to connect with you, help you understand these things, and walk on that journey with you.
Just humans in general.
Yes. Human beings.
We just had one of our last guests. I met her down at the Anchor conference in Miami, and she just had this great presentation about like putting the human back in human services and like why do we just like segregate and group people? Like we just need to work on how we are treating humanity, and then maybe some of the things we need through the system will start happening. But did you start in the DD field or did you? Because I know you had done some work down in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm pulling from, I'd say the last 17 years of work with my current role, right? Integrating lessons along the way. I did an AmeriCorps program in Cincinnati called Public Allies, which was an incredible experience, really kind of changed the trajectory of my life. I was going to graduate college and go to Germany with my high school boyfriend, a little sweetheart, have a good time, work in a restaurant, learn the language, that did not happen. I went to Cincinnati instead for the AmeriCorps program, and just not only fell in love with the community, but the community work we were doing was really incredible and motivated me to actually stay on for a second year as a fellow. And then I went to the Peace Corps. So this kind of on the ground, working with folks and communities on the ground level, that was a big passion of mine. I went to Namibia for 2 years and worked as a health volunteer. That's in Southwestern Africa. And then I came back to the States, wondered what the hell I'm doing here and in the world. Why are there so many salad dressings on the shelves? Why do we drive everywhere? Right? I had all these kind of big life questions. And then found my way to Starfire, which is the first place I did community organizing with adults with a developmental disability label. So I've been in that part of the work since about 2010. And the story goes from there.
So what, you probably already alluded to this. So, and I love what you said, because like I've been having this conversation with many people. So there's a lot of strategizing and planning, something I'm not good at, right? That goes into a lot of the work that we do. And especially, when you're looking at the DD system, everyone, you have to have a meeting to talk about the strategy for more meetings to do this and that. And so one of the questions that I've really been asking people is like, when did it hit you like this is more than just meetings and talking, which obviously in our system have a place, but like I've always been also more of you need to get the boots on the ground. Like we got to get out there. We have to do something. It's more than just, I always go back to Judith Human's book where, and I know it's not a Judy Human quote, but someone who was in the 504 sit-in said, you guys are out there politicizing and we're just dying. And so that always struck me as, while there's a time and space and place for that sort of action, meetings and stuff like that, when it comes down to it, it's just about having your feet on the ground, being present, and working in smaller grassroots type things, like developing those relationships and all those things. So at what point, and it sounds like you've always been doing that, but like what kind of compelled you more to, we just have to take action, we need to move in this direction?
Yeah, great question. Three crossroads come to mind, or three learning points throughout my journey. One, I was trained early on asset-based community development. So not just the assets of a person, but when we are in neighborhoods, we're in communities, literally walking around, feet on the street, right? Walking around neighborhoods and looking to where are the local, institutional, educational, where are the assets in the community, and where can we find roles and connections and bring our gifts to those different places. So I think that lens, the ABCD lens, really informed all of my work. I learned that outside of a disability context, so I didn't have any clouding of who can or can't do what. It was just about giftedness. Then when I came into Starfire, the leadership there was very clear about protecting those of us who were on the ground, one-on-one work, from all of the bureaucracy that gets us in those stuck places. We never read anyone's charts. We didn't know anyone's labels. The leadership hired someone to create a data recording system that took the pressure off of us as direct service folks to have more fidelity to paperwork than to the person. So we had a very easy way to communicate what we did. That data went to the administration and they figured out how to get it into IEPs and back to grantors and all that stuff. So we weren't sitting around having meetings for meetings' sake, right? So that was one of my first professional experiences where that buffer was intentionally created. And then I pull that into my work now. One of my mentors from the Starfire days, not at Starfire, but a mentor in the community, she's been advising me on a contract that we were invited into with a county board who asked for some organizational change, for some kind of high-level culture building work. And my first stab at that kind of proposal was to bring us up into that talk space, into that visionary, into that brainstorming space. And when I shared that with my mentor, who's done a lot of work around Ohio, around strategic development, et cetera, she brought me back down to the ground. She said, what makes Soulbird unique is you work with real people, you do real work, and you have real results. So instead of sitting at the organizational level, she helped us reframe our proposal to bring it back to the people who are benefiting, right? People who are served and supported by county boards, and work from that ground space around biographical timelines and integrating our learnings through a person's story that would trickle back up into organizational or systemic change. So I think that question around how do we, or where does that come from for me, staying on the ground, it's been through mentorship, and it's also been through continued guidance to keep one foot on the ground, even though I'm a visionary and I want to be up in the clouds sometimes. So I think good community partners and not getting sucked up in meetings for meetings' sake. That's just always been a drive of mine.
I think we've talked about this before, because I feel like we're very the same in the fact that I'm like, oh, no, we can do this and we can do that, and then this is going to happen. And so the importance of, when you are that type of person, surrounding yourself with people who can kind of say, take a step back. I like where you're going, but take a step back. And what's the first step of that? I always joke around in like grad school and college that I'm the type of person, I would write my paper first and then pull an outline out of it, because I could never like outline and map things correctly. So I'm always just like so grateful for anyone who can be that voice of reason and just be like, hey, it's not bad, but what's your first step and how do you get there? And so that's definitely something I've been working on as well. But so I kind of have two questions, and Paul can just edit later. So I want to get back to the storytelling aspect. So like, can you elaborate more just on storytelling? Because I actually listened, and I think this was a few years ago, to a podcast, and you were on it with another person, I believe, who'd worked really hard in like teaching people how to tell their stories and their narratives and just the healing power of that. And so I do a lot of storytelling and a lot of my presentations and stuff like that, but I also really emphasize not being forced to tell your story, because I think that's a huge issue in our system. Every time you get a new caseworker, every time you get a new staff, every time you get all these new people joining your team, there is a very significant trauma because we force people to share their stories before they're ready, before they've healed. But I also know on the other side of that, if you do have healing there, if you do have the ability to talk openly about your story and share that in an empowering way, how amazing that can be. So I don't know if that's if that made sense. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you had anything you wanted to share around that.
Yes, I'm making some notes. So we'll just stick with the number 3 because 3 things are coming up. And I'll work backwards. The third, I would say, the third is you just named, I think, one of the issues we have within our social service system, that we don't have a culture of, like we said, uplifting full humanity. We have a culture of caseworkers, case notes, and client rosters. And all of that language is othering, and it really kind of keeps us separate from the human connection and interaction, right? On our worst days. On our best days, we can balance the two if we're nurtured and supported there. But I think it dips us into an unconscious space of the other. Because that system is set, we forget that when I meet new people, when I'm introducing myself to new people, it's not about something that isn't for an agenda item, right? Rapport building and then case planning, right? It's just connection. It's just storytelling. It's just sharing. And if we can take that human experience and plop it over what we're up against in the service system, I think we would create a new system for how to initiate people in and out of people's circles or teams, right? If someone needs the support of human service professionals to live their biggest, fullest life, awesome. And we can do better in integrating new team members, as we know one of the things we're up against is folks are transient. So instead of each new caseworker saying, so what do you like to do? It's in the notes, and it should be in a book. It should be in an onboarding process, an invitation, an orientation of welcome to my home. This is who I am and what I love. This is how we spend our days. We'd love for you to spend them with us versus I'm your new worker and now we're going to work on my agenda. Right. So soapbox, we'll not get on, but that's the third thing I would say. The second around storytelling is something you mentioned. I'm going to forget fully, but you said, Paul can edit. I think there's, the healing power of storytelling, right? So when I think of storytelling in that aspect, beyond who am I and what do I like and what am I interested in, when we invite people to tell their histories that might have been challenging, stressful, traumatic, right? Those types of stories, it's in my understanding of this work is that it can be very healing to be seen and heard for fully who you are, whether or not you articulate that verbally or not. That experience of being seen and heard is something that's necessary for that healing journey. And when you're able to share your story and be held and heard by a safe other, that can be really empowering. Right? We want to make more spaces for that to happen. But like you said, not on an agenda, not through force, not through expectation, but through evolution of the relationship, right? That relational space, right? So I think that we want to be mindful that that is really healing and helpful, but not to push that. And I think that would bring me back to when I first think of storytelling, my number one point around storytelling and why it's so helpful is because within our service system, the stories we tell often, right, can be lost in bureaucracy, can be lost in pathologizing, in the dehumanizing elements of reducing someone to the sum of their challenging behaviors. And when we as professionals can start to, it's a Brandon Black quote, can storient towards a person, can understand a person and talk about them in ways that show their full humanity, that really influences all the work that we have set for us as we walk forward, right? So storytelling in the larger sense, learning from a person's biography, deeply understanding people before we design services and supports, and maintaining the culture of storytelling and story listening throughout a partnership, I think would be a really positive direction to move in.
So I know that on the podcast that I have not hosted, they have had some guests that are part of like the Northwest Ohio Trauma Coalitions and stuff like that. Do you briefly want to talk about kind of just trauma-informed, trauma-responsive care, and then how that relates to all these different, well, just humanity in general, right? But all these different systems and, wounds, systematic traumas that we have and the individual ones and stuff like that?
Sure. So I think right now, probably specifically in Ohio, what I'm best known for is my work in trauma-informed or trauma-responsive care. But I'd like to offer a different forward-facing lens. So if you've ever read the article, Sean Jenright's article around healing-centered engagement, right? So he speaks to, I think, an important shift. And I'm hearing that come up a little bit more. There's a New Yorker article called Avoiding the Trauma Plot. I haven't read every single word, but what I've integrated and started to begin to digest has been speaking to something I've been sensing, over the past couple of years, where this word trauma is on a more popular scale, right? So we've got lots of people understanding or putting their understanding their lens on this word, and we might not have a shared definition at society, right? So much so, we also are hearing people, I think specifically folks who work with people, teachers, foster parents, human service professionals. There's almost a bit of a burnout experience around this topic. It feels like a buzzword. I'd stop talking to me about that, go on and on. So as I sense that frustration, I'm reminded of two things. One, when we talk about things that are painful, are challenging, are stress-inducing, it elicits our stress response, and a safe way to protect and defend is to ignore and dissociate, right? So there's part of us who says, stop talking about that. It's too much for me, right? There's a miss there. And from my experience, when we don't understand someone's biography, when we don't understand their history and the root of where they are today, right, we end up mislabeling, misdiagnosing, and then mistreating people within our systems, our schools, et cetera, right? But the 100% focus backwards into the past gets us into that trauma being the only organizing principle of our lives. So the wisdom we hear from Sean Jenright is, how do we keep orienting to a positive and possible future based on our understanding of where we've come from and what's alive right now? So shifting towards from trauma-informed care to healing-centered engagement is an invitation I'm accepting, or I'm trying to bring my work into. Because we know that trauma as a word, what that's describing is an experience of an overwhelmed nervous system where you perceive or experience a real threat in your environment. Your nervous system shoots you up in the fight or flight or down into that shutdown space, and you don't have resolution. That experience happens, that overwhelm happens in your nervous system. If you don't have resolution, you don't have safe relationships to process or articulate or feel seen and heard around what happened, that residue, that neurochemical, the cortisol, the adrenaline, and the endorphins, it gets stuck in your nervous system. And later on, a sight, smell, sound, et cetera, can trigger that experience as if it's happening right here, right now. So trauma isn't just what happened to you, it's how you experience that. And it's my hope that our field around trauma-informed care, our field starts to understand, so we stop blaming and shaming people for their reactions or responses to those known or unknown triggers. And then that we help get to not only know someone in their past, but what are their gifts, their passions and interests, so we can orient and walk with people towards that future. Because at the end of everything, we know, and this is it's an Amy Chavez quote, so I want to credit her, but this is the work of polyvagal theory. We have a biological imperative for safety and belonging. So the root of all trauma is when that's ruptured, when safety and belonging are absent from us. So when we can get back into safety and back into belonging and back into relationship and back into connection, that's really that healing-centered engagement I think Sean is pointing us towards.
Yes, I read that article. I don't remember when, but I had probably again a few years. I feel like I haven't really read a ton lately other than like self-help books. So It's all good. No, when I read that, I definitely, and I think there was a quote from a young man, and he's like, yeah, bad things happen to me or whatever, but like if you're just stuck there, like how you're going to hold me back, like you're not going to see what I'm capable of doing and to not get stuck there. And so I think, again, that storytelling and being able to, for him to be able to articulate that and explain that does give us some things to do. And I'm thinking particularly about a person that we're supporting right now that, significant trauma and just that inability to heal right now, right? And so just always trying to, and she'll always bring it back, like this bad thing happened, and we have kind of like a safety script, like, yes, they were unsafe, that you were hurt, but you survived. And then to try and shift it again towards, but what can we, we can move forward. We don't have to stay here. I'll stay here in this moment with you as long as you need, but let's make that connection and let's try and have hope for the future. Because I think that, is it Bessel good old Bessel van der Kolk. But he talks about trauma really being the inability to imagine a better future, to be able, like, it just kills your imagination. And without the ability to imagine something better and have that hope, like to me, that's the saddest thing ever, right? Like, to not be able to see a way out of the pain that you feel right now or the pain that was inflicted on you in the past, and to not be able to move forward. So I always really, cling to that. And like, how can we get people to imagine again? And it always sounds very like unscientific. And I think that people are like, oh, Sarah, you're such a hippie or something like that. And I'm like, no, we have to imagine better. But I take that aspect into every part of my work, like as agencies, we have to be able to imagine better. Like, as parents, we have to be able to imagine better. As workers, as people, just humans, right? Like, anytime you get stuck in that pattern of this is all there is, then that's just so detrimental. So I don't know where I was going with that. But I think that there's a lot to be said about being able to help people imagine, to be able to kind of like stand. And I see that in a lot of the healing centric engagement, the healing-centric work, to be able to do that, to say like, yeah, you can't see it now and I'm going to sit here with you in this, but also I want you to know that I have the ability. If you can't imagine right now, I want you to know that I can imagine too. And I want to be able to be here and let you know that I can do that. So, and just again, that relationship aspect of it, because that doesn't work for, like, hi, I'm here to support you and I'm going to meet you for 2 hours and, I'm a professional in this field and I'm going to do all this and give your team a plan and everything's going to be better, right? We need to get that down to, again, the very grassroots level. And I love what you were saying about just Starfire being able to take some of that responsibility off and really, really get strategic about, this is the relationship that matters the most. This is what we're putting our energy into. And I feel like I need to call Tim up and be like, tell me more about this.
Tell me more, guide me.
So what, so you've kind of just been all over too. So you're not strictly in Ohio, correct? Like, you work all over. I know your staff is kind of mobile and everywhere. I love it. What kind of things you got going on?
Sure. Matt, speaking of possible future orientations, So a lot of my work, of course, has been in Ohio because that's where I've been living for the past 15 or so years. But with COVID, like everyone else, the work went online. And for our work, for my offerings, that online space is a space where we really thrived. There's no substitute for in-person. So I'm not suggesting that online offerings are a replacement. But what I realized in the training space, it is really accessible to meet people where they're at, literally in their homes or in their offices. I work with a lot of schools where teachers 4 or 5 will be around a computer in their classroom. And so we have that over several buildings in a district where we get to engage together during small group conversations. They get to be in their classroom with their colleagues to talk about what we're ideating around and then come back to share in the larger Zoom space. So this training space really was successful. It's my hope that I continue to nurture people on increments over periods of time in the online space, and then at specific intervals have in-person engagements to build relationship, to commune together, to really thrive in that space. But instead of home by home or county by county, more statewide or nationwide offerings are on the radar for Solberg right now. We've been hard at work kind of creating a foundation, an insular foundation. So we have a stool right now, a 3-legged stool of folks who are working on building that Solberg mission. But our hope is that we create a larger nest, a larger flock of folks who can continue to ideate and work together all around issues of this healing-centered work. So how do we create more spaces to be relational, to counter cultural norms and the status quo that exists right now, and continue to walk with people on their learning journeys? My experience is a one and done training can be interesting. I know I can inspire people. We can have aha moments. But for that inspiration to have a place to land and then to be nurtured and cultivated over time is really my hope for the future of Solberg's work, where we get to have long-standing relationships with groups, with families, with counties, and continue to be in each other's corners as we all work towards, I think, a more a larger cultural shift. Not just in the work, but just as far as humanity is unfolding right now. So
I agree, because there's, I feel like there are certain trainings that I go to that they're like, yes, I'm motivated, I'm pumped, let's go. But then that's just never quite enough. And you're always going to run into those people who want to dig deeper and who want to learn more. I feel like with trauma-informed care, that was something that definitely happened with me. But also, as you said, we're always learning and evolving and growing, right? So what we start out as, we can't stay as, because now we know, okay, if we're just focusing on the trauma, it's a hype word. It got super popular, all this stuff. So now we need to shift focus and look towards more of the healing. So we needed that part, right? That's our foundation. We needed that part, but now we have to learn more and we have to shift. To get stuck in the beginning, I feel is such a disservice. And I think, again, there's just always so much that we're learning. And to keep that process alive, it has to be that relationship. It has to be hey, we're going to go back, or this is a series, or, I'm going to follow up. I'm going to share, sharing that information, because I think that's, I feel like there's so many, and not to take it back to the DD field, I feel like we could take this to any systematic, any system that we operate in, but there's so many things that we get this is the way, this is amazing. And then it becomes a hype word. And then, employees just stop listening. I've heard person-centered planning every day for the last 27 years. I will not engage in this. To always self-find that evolving portion of it, and that you're always learning and there's always more to learn. And to have the self-awareness to be yeah, I think what I believed might be incorrect now based on new things, and being willing to be challenged and to continually grow and stuff like that. I think that's the hardest part of humanity, being a human. I don't know. But just having that ability to be hey, yeah, I have new information, and I think that, I think that I did what I could with the information I had now, but I need to be able to evolve and I need to be able to change. I need to be able to share that and to develop those relationships and that follow up. And, but when you work with systems, I do feel like, okay, like you've been training in the state of Ohio for, I think you said 15 years.
Well, 6 years with this specific subject, but I've been in this work for 17. That the pedagogy I developed over time is unlearn, learn, and practice. So to your point, this unlearned space, that's really where we start. What do we believe to be true right now? Let's write it down. Let's talk about it. Let's orient to what's true. And now let's create relational and environmental safety so we can open up our capacity for curiosity. Let's unlearn some things. Let's learn some new things. And then let's practice together, right? So that iterative process, I feel like, meets what you're talking about, the pain point you're talking about. Instead of getting in this stuck place, how do we create the learning context where ambiguity, curiosity, and humility can start to be centered so we can evolve and grow?
You are on the threes today. You got a lot of... The threes. Dun, dun,
yes.
Dun.
Title of the podcast.
So I am very interested because I have just a lineup of super kick-ass women that I have for my first 5 episodes of the podcast. Ooh. So I am not very good at businessy stuff. But I am very interested because I think it takes really such courage and belief and badassery to start your own business, to do that. So can you kind of tell the process for you in hey, this is something, there's a need that needs met. I'm able to meet it, or I have the resources, and all this knowledge to do it. Can you kind of talk about that process for you?
It's going to be under inspiring because it was not something I set out to do. I did not have the thought, I want to be an entrepreneur, and here I go. What I did have, I know I have a gift of presence, and I know I have a gift of when I believe in something, I can speak to it from all kinds of cells in my body, from my heart, from my head, from my action. Right? I put things into action. And I say that because every group that I've been a part of, Public Allies, Peace Corps, Starfire, I have been able to champion these efforts because I believe them to my core. So as I started to work more in the trauma-informed and the disability world, mental health field, I started to see all these coalescing of systems and of folks. I started to be able to speak to and gain passion for this work in a way that I was invited into more experiences where I could speak, share, train, work alongside folks. So as that took off, as those invitations kept coming, I took the leap. Instead of accepting a statewide job, I took the leap to then start my own business. And since 2016, I have been pushing water uphill, it seems, to try to figure out how to make this not just sustainable, because that's always been something that's happened, right? I've had a sustainable business, but I don't have a business plan. I don't have a strategic plan. I don't have an outlined vision and mission, right? And so we're working towards something. So to be asked this question now is important for me because I am at the crossroads of, okay, I think I know a little bit of what I'm doing. I think I know a little bit of the landscape and where my gifts lie in this field. And now how do I formalize that in a way that there's a shared vision and that we're working towards that, whoever the we is. I'm at an exciting time because I'm in the midst of planning and thinking through and ideating around a future that does not exist, but I'm acting as if it's alive right here, right now. So that's a little vague, but that's kind of what I'm building towards. And I think the main thing I would suggest or to offer or to share as part of my journey is I've always had the capacity to ask for help, to say, I don't know, say, please, someone walk alongside of me. And for a while, those were just asks, but I've been fortunate enough to create a successful enough business where I can start to hire on some team members to help me move this pretty nebulous vision into something a little bit more clear and understood. So Accidental entrepreneur, but so far I feel like I've reached out to enough people to get the support I need to continue on this path. And if that ever hits an iceberg and that's not my path forward, I'll be open to whatever shows up next. But that's a little bit about
be
my
willing.
journey. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that that's any journey like I've gone on, or any good thing that has come out of my life has come from being able to ask for help or knowing people, right? And so I use this all the time, like in our work, like I wouldn't have any job that I enjoyed or any job that I have had. I wouldn't be in this field if it weren't for relationships with people, if it weren't for someone saying, you know, who'd be really great at this, that's Sarah, you know? So I think that, and that's really just like what strikes me, and just like even this season of my life that I'm in right now, it's like, I can't imagine going through hard times without a community and without those connections and without those relationships. And it's extremely humbling, right? But it's also just fills you with so much gratitude over like, oh my gosh, there are people, especially, you know, there's, you know, I'm like one of those people, I can do it all. It's fine. I've got this. But I've been really forced to stop and to utilize my community and accept their help. And I'm just like, well, I just don't even know if I'll ever go back. Right. Like, yes, maybe you could function on your own, but you don't have to, because we have community and we have these relationships and we have all this stuff. So I think that, you know, just being people hearing that, right? Like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to admit that you don't know it all. I think my favorite thing is like, well, let me check on that and I'll get back to you. Exactly. You know, I could make up something very interesting. I really could, but I would like to give you correct information. So, so I think that, you know, I think that's always so beneficial for people to hear, is like, be willing to ask for help, be willing to, again, go through that unlearning and learning process and enable that to kind of let you grow and stuff like that. So,
well, awesome. two things I would add. One, let's see. I think because of my own experience with how important relationships and resourcing is, I think sometimes when we hear that, we think just monetarily, but the relational resource, the environmental resource, I lean on those skills, the asset-based work and the networking, the community building, the ability to ask for help for my own work. And it helps me understand how important that is for everyone, right? So often when we work with folks with any kind of label, disability label, mental health label, automatically our imagination is shut off. And we think what's accessible in the system, what's accessible to a disability, versus first looking at who is this person? What do they love? What are they interested in? What are they passionate about? Who's in their network and who else might we involve? That's a practice, not only in my one-on-one work, but it's a practice that I bring to life. And I think that we can all benefit a bit from taking the things that, if you're a neurotypical person and you have neurotypical experiences, whatever the hell that means, right? If you bring those learnings into every relationship versus deciding around the myth of, oh, that's not for those people over there, right? This is just for me and my circle. I think we get really stuck there. So, using the full power of imagination and all that I do, I think is important. Just necessary when we think about that relationship building. It's not just great for me, for you. That's important and necessary for all human beings as we walk together on this journey.
Yeah. Well, and I think it kind of gets back with like the theme of like just humans. Like we're all just humans. Yes. And so, but yeah, I feel like especially like, you know, in learning more about like trauma responsive and like healing engagement, like everything that I learned that was like, oh, use this specifically for this field. It's like, no, like this works for everyone. This is a way to do life that just really, you know, seeks to understand each human. And I think that we get so caught up, you know, just in everything in the daily life. Like, you know, how many times do you hear like, oh, this person's such a waste of space? You know, like I've heard stuff like that before, and the judgments that we just make against other humans in general. And so, yeah, I feel like anything that I've learned in however long I've been in this field is not like, oh, this is just specific for people with DD. Like, no, they're human too. Like, it's just humans. Let's be person-centered for everyone. Let's take time to get to know people. Let's listen to stories. Let's help them share and help other people imagine. I think that kind of, and starting at that grassroots here, look, I'm going to bring it all together. No, but like starting at that group, starting in your local community, like just a very natural way, like starting in your neighborhood, get to know your neighbors, you know, and then just kind of see where it goes from there, because I think that there's so much power. And obviously, like, I'm a huge Peter Block fan. I use his work all the time. Talking about building community and just being willing to not agree and being willing to see the humanity in others and value their opinion, even if you disagree with it. So I definitely, I think that it gets back to like, yes, we all have these big visions, we all have this imagination, but how do we start at the grassroots and how do we develop those relationships that let other people bring their gifts instead of just shutting them out?
Amen.
But no.
Wrap. Can I invite your listeners to one opportunity coming up?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. So I'm working with my colleague, Kara Michelle Pearson over at Lilac and Indigo to bring a year's worth of programming to families who love or care for someone with a developmental disability. It's going to be a trauma-sensitive mindfulness journey that we have live content sessions offered. We're creating a facilitator's guide. So if you want to take this work into your community, you can do that. We're also going to have practice sessions throughout the year, early morning rise and shine for any morning folks, where we'll engage in mindfulness practices together, a lunch time meditation space, and then an ease into the evening experience as well. So all of that is happening later on this year and next year. But we have two kickoffs that we want to, I would love to share with your listeners, because we want to talk about the programming and the invitation before it gets started. And the first program kickoff is 6:30 p.m. on June 16th. That's next Thursday, June 16th in the evening, 6:30 to 8. And then we have a lunchtime kickoff. Let's see, looks like Tuesday the 21st, 11:30 to 1. And those will just pretty much be commercials for what the programming is all about, what the calendar is going to be. And if folks have questions or interest, then they can sign up. So if you just come to soulbirdconsulting.info, you can find some information probably on our website, or you can email me at sarah@soulbirdconsulting.info to hear more.
Very cool. Are you going to have more kickoffs, like other things, like if it's later this year, or will you have more opportunities too?
For that specific initiative, or?
Yeah.
So the two kind of kickoffs are advertising what is this all about are going to be happening next week and the week after. And our official programming starts, let me tell you live here. In July, the first, July 14th will be the first day of our 6-week series. So the whole program calendar will be outlined in our kickoffs, so people can join that to hear more.
Well, thank you so much, friend.
Yes,
very grateful.
You. Thanks for the invitation, for sure.
All right. And you have a wonderful week. It is only Monday.
Whew, we're getting there.